Hello, and welcome to the first WPLDN of 2021. Diane, Paul, thank you so much for joining me this evening.
Hello, it's nice to be back. I almost feel like that it's not been the first because of WordFest, but it is the first.
It's been a bit of a roller coaster already, isn't it, into our entrance into 2021?
Certainly.
Excellent. Well, we're really pleased. If you are joining us on live.bigorangeheart.org, thank you so much for being there with us. There is a live chat over on the site there. Please do feel free to use that live chat across the event. We've got two fantastic speakers coming up this evening, which I'll go into in a moment. So feel free, if you have questions for those speakers, do use that live chat. But before we get into that, just wanted to run through a couple of bits of housekeeping. As I've mentioned, we've got two speakers this evening. Feel free to use the live chat for your questions. Both speakers will be holding a live Q&A at the end of their session. Excuse me. These events are delivered by Big Orange Heart, a registered charity that supports and promotes positive well-being and mental health within the remote working communities. These are entirely driven and delivered by volunteers, and I just want to mention our hosts this evening across this are 100% volunteers, as everything is within Big Orange Heart. So thank you very much, Paul and Diane, both on camera with me at the moment, but equally we've also got Leo, who isn't currently with us, but I do believe will be joining us later on this evening, and other, there's a whole team sitting behind Big Orange Heart that's really enabling this, so thank you. I just wanted to quickly introduce myself. I'm Dan Maybe, the founder of Big Orange Heart, and I'm here to help deliver and enable these events into our community, helping reduce social isolation. Diane, do you want to give yourself a quick introduction?
Yeah. Hello, I'm Diane Wallace, and I'm a freelance web developer and designer, and I specialize in custom WordPress themes and plugins.
Excellent, thank you. And Paul?
Good evening, everybody. I'm Paul Smart. I run an agency in South London, Smart Digital, and I'm also on the Big Orange Heart fundraising team.
That you are. Thank you very much. And if it wasn't for people such as yourselves doing what you're doing, then we simply wouldn't be able to deliver Big Orange Heart. So thank you very much. And also I wanted to say a big thank you to our sponsors. Each of these sponsors are enabling us to be able to deliver the charity as a whole, which in turn is then enabling us to deliver this event. Rather than listening to me waffle on, I'm going to play a nice little video for you.
Fancy pants.
Passionate about making the web a better place. Automatic.com. Your managed cloud hosting platform. Cloudways.com. Generate more leads for your digital agency. Funnelpacks.com. The WordPress multilingual plugin. Weglot.com. Tips, tricks and resources for people who use WordPress. WinningWP.com. The search engine optimization plugin for WordPress. Yoast.com. Excellent. And you may have noticed on the video and on the slides there, we've got a little link saying big.ht/thanks. We'd really appreciate it if you could hit that. If you drop that URL into your browser, it will open up a tweet for you that will just pre-form a thank you for a thanks to each of our sponsors there. So please do help us share our appreciation with our sponsors. They're enabling us to be able to deliver this free wellbeing and mental health support into our community. Equally, we've got a number of companies that are donating time. Blue 37, Smart Digital, and Sotic. Thank you very much for contributing time into Big Orange Heart and WPLDN. So on to tonight, as I mentioned at the start, we've got two fantastic speakers, Mark Wilkinson and Graham Armfield. Both long-term supporters, speakers, members of the community. I think Mark mentioned in the social earlier, been around since the
beginning of time.
So a wealth of knowledge to be shared across this. So really looking forward to it. Mark's going to be giving away secrets. Apparently not. He's talking about how he writes code to build sites that have stand the test of time. And Graham is going to be asking us, how do we know that our WordPress website is accessible? So two incredibly important topics, and I think there's an element of both of them. There's an element of the joined up discussion between the two of them. So looking forward to having some conversations afterwards. But before we do that, we've got our community announcements. So this is an opportunity. If you are on live.bigorangeheart.org, please do use the live chat to let us know if you're aware of anything that's going on in and around the community. It's an opportunity just to share it with us. We will then share it on the screen here, let the community know. We'd love to hear from you. So if you are aware of anything happening, there may be some training sessions going on. There may be some other events, within the WordPress community or the wider open source PHP's communities. Do let us know. Maybe you're hiring. Maybe you're looking to be hired. It's a great opportunity to get this shared with the community. So whilst we wait for any of those to come through on the chat, we do have a couple of things that we just wanted to cover off and discuss beforehand. First up, our friends over at GiveWP. I just want to say a big congratulations to them. They are celebrating 100,000 users of their plugin, GiveWP plugin. If you are not familiar with it, their mission is to democratize giving, democratizing donations, online donations. I think it's a fantastic milestone. 100,000 users. I think anybody should be proud of hitting that point. 100,000 customers across their platform. They are running an event on the 5th of February. So do head over to givewp.com. They're also offering 30% off all of their pricing plans for a limited time. And as I mentioned, are hosting this event on the 5th of February. So some of us may be familiar with the, see the little 8-bit screenshot on the screen there. So they're using GatherTown for this, which I don't know, Paul, Diane, I don't know if you have an opportunity to use GatherTown yet for your virtual event.
But was it Leo that said that he went to an event in GatherTown, like using GatherTown, and it was really interesting? I think it might be Leo. He can't.
It was Leo.
He's not here. He's not here to he's not here to correct me. So we'll just assume it's Leo. And and he said it was really, really interesting, and gave it that social kind of element that that we're all struggling to kind of recreate. So I am very interested to see it.
Yeah.
So I might even just go along just to see.
It's really interesting because it's spatially aware. So as you're moving around on the screen, your audio is fading in and out as you move closer to individuals that are in the call. So it's a really interesting concept. Another one similar is Rambly.app. Some really interesting solutions coming up.
Yeah.
But just a big congratulations to GiveWP and what they're doing. And it's actually the solution that we use for our donations at Big Orange Heart as well. So we're very proud and very happy to support GiveWP as a product. They enable us to be able to raise funds and support our charitable mission. Excellent. Okay. Next up, WP Buffs. Again, big fans of the WP Buffs teams. They've just supported us across WordFest as well. So thank you very much. They've just announced their first acquisition, WP Easy. So I thought this was an interesting point. Paul, I think you picked up on this one as well. It was a story shared.
I did, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's very interesting. I know WP Easy's small by comparison. Apparently they paid a 5-figure sum for it. WP Easy's got a fairly small customer base by comparison to WP Buffs. But I think the interesting thing there is for what a lot of people would class as sort of like the holy grail, which is the recurring revenue, which of course both of those have. And WP Buffs, I was very interested in that they've done a couple of good articles actually where Joe Howard has given some really good advice on monthly recurring revenue. And they've actually increased theirs by over 300% in the last 2 years. And then they're now up to over $100,000 a month in recurring revenue, which I thought was very, very interesting. And WP Easy, again, I think their recurring revenue, I think got about 64 or 65 customers who pay about $90 a month each. So it's about $5,500 a month in recurring revenue. So yeah, I think it's very good.
it was interesting reading on the WP Buff site. There was an article. Joe had a so the CEO of WP Buffs had a conversation with Paul, the founder of WP Easy, and they were talking. It sounds like they had a really interesting. Sounds like a really interesting partnership. WP Easy sounds like it had hit a point that WP Buffs has been through. The $10,000 to $15,000 MMR figure. And having had conversations with other companies, it seems like this is a bit of a hurdle. This point. So WP Buffs have gone through that clearly. They've got a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge to share in that market space. So yeah, really, really interesting.
And as Joe said, I think in that article that you're referring to, that they actually have the revenue and the ability to jump above that, and the experience, of course. But they can throw the money at it to take them and overcome those roadblocks that people at that level are coming up against.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. So I think big congratulations on both sides there, both WP Buffs and the WP Easy team. Congratulations. Yeah. Okay, next up, another interesting. This was again picked up in the WP Tavern. This is a discussion around the plugins that are changing the settings in relation to auto updates. So there's been a number of plugins that have had updates recently where we've seen this setting. So I think it was 5. Am I right in saying it's 5.5? We had the auto update. I could be entirely wrong on that. Because we're talking about that auto updating of plugins, and there is a setting now in your plugin admin screen where you can either turn that on or off. Whether you want the option for WordPress core to automatically go updating those plugins each time an update is available. And this story is talking about some plugins that have actually been overriding that setting. And the plugin team have now come out with a categorical statement that this is not to happen. Unless your plugin is specifically designed to manage the the updating and the management of plugins, it should not be adjusting that setting. I don't know if either of you had any experience or come across this issue at all.
I haven't had the experience of a plugin that's changed my settings, but I do think that they were right actually to say that this shouldn't be done, because if a user has gone in and chose the settings they want for their site for whatever reason, you shouldn't be overriding those anyway. That's their choice, and they also might have very good reasons why they don't want to auto update. It could be around managing conflicts, and the last thing that you want to do is take someone's site down. So I think that this was a necessary step, and I haven't had any plugins overriding my settings, but I would be concerned. I think I understand as well why developers might want to do it, because a lot of the time you assume that your users are not updating because because we've all had clients that you go back to their site after 6 months and you're like, you've not updated your plugins once, but you can't make those decisions, I think, for your users, because you don't know why they might choose not to update their plugins, and they might have a valid reason.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think there's, one argument that I have seen being bandied around that the concept of enabling auto updates is out of we were wanting to encourage that updating of our code base and making sure that it is the most secure code base that we have. But as you said, there are so many reasons that are we talking about continuous integration? Are we talking about the management of the code that we're running within our sites? There's so many reasons for us to not be an option within these plugins.
Yeah, I think if everything's updating, it's not going to break anything. That's fine, but of course, there's no guarantee. So, I do agree. I don't think that the plugin producers should be changing those settings. That's for the user. That's for the website owner or manager to decide what happens there.
Absolutely. before we move on, I just wanted to bring this up on screen. Mark, who is going to be joining us on screen in a moment, just wanted to mention that the next WP Cafe episode is going to be taking place. So what we're talking about, WordPress security, going to happen on the 16th of February. So hit youtube.com/highrise. The WP Cafe sessions have been fantastic. I just want to, just congratulate the Highrise team for what they've been doing across that. And I guess we can jump into that a bit more in a moment when we have a conversation with Mark. Excellent. Okay. So next up, there was this little thing that happened. Just wanted to dive into a little bit. But if you didn't see it, if you weren't aware of it, I'm just going to very quickly hit this button. So WordFest was a 24-hour celebration of the WordPress community. It happened Friday just gone. In fact, it actually happened Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. We traveled 24 hours across multiple time zones. It all got very, very confusing, and there was lots going on. I just wanted to run through a few things that had happened across the event. And first off, just wanted to say an enormous thank you to every single person that was involved across the event. It's from concept to delivery, from launch of the concept to delivery was 93 days, which I think when we're talking about a 24-hour event covering 48 international speakers, is a pretty incredible undertaking by anybody's standards. Having to build the venue to then deliver this event, as if that wasn't enough of an undertaking. Of course, then the management of 48 sessions, the management of sponsors, and just the full infrastructure to be able to deliver this event. I really wanted to say a huge thank you to every single person that was involved across this. It was a huge team. That enabled us to deliver this. I know we've got both Paul and Diane, you were involved on the day, so thank you very much. We've got people in the audience, so I can see that are joining us, that were part of it. Robert, I can see you in the live chat there. Thank you for jumping on as an MC, jumping on as a media partner. You really did enable us to be able to deliver something that I hope you don't mind me saying felt really quite special into the community. When we look at that lineup of speakers, it was a fantastic 24 hours. The content that was delivered across it was incredibly varied, and we wanted that to be intentional. We wanted to be covering the WordPress core, making sure that we're talking about WordPress as a core product, talking about plugins, development, design, accessibility. But we also wanted to look at the people, the people around the community, and of course, Big Orange Heart, our focus is around well-being, mental health. So we were talking about, bringing in sessions that were focused on well-being. We had chair yoga sessions. It was a really varied mix, and it was really about us, the people, the community. We had over nearly 2,300 attendees join us over that 24-hour period, and it was just an incredible experience. For me personally, it felt a little bit odd because I was kind of sat in the background the whole time, just lots of buttons and making sure people were in the right place, doing the right things. But I know there was an incredible team around this, and I'm so grateful for everybody that was on camera and behind camera, enabling it.
Yeah, I'd like to say thank you to the people behind the camera, because they really, they were brilliant at telling me. I didn't do anything except for they were like, now go here and go there. I had no idea what I was doing, and Sandy was just brilliant at making sure that I was always in the right place at the right time. So so I wanted to say thank you to Sandy and everybody in the team behind the scenes, because they were superstars on the day.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we had a team of
fantastic job.
Yeah, there was around 60 volunteers across this event as well. So just an enormous amount of bringing it together, really. And just wanted to very quickly mention that, This is still subject to change, but at this stage we've raised $40,610 for Big Orange Heart off the back of this event. Now that's a combination of sponsorship and public donations. I think we had 177 public donations come in from individuals. We had an incredible amount of micro sponsors, all enabling us to be able to deliver a support hub. So the money that was raised through WordFest is going directly into the development of the Big Orange Heart support hub. That support hub will bring together a collection of existing support services as well as some new support services into the remote working community. So really it was a bit of a win-win situation. You know, we had a fantastic day together as a community coming together, but equally off the back of that, we've then been able to, you know, we're able to deliver further support into the community. One of the reasons we're mentioning all of this is that we do have an open call for feedback available right now. If we haven't heard from you already, we would love to hear from you at wordfest.live/feedback. It's a short 10-question survey. It can be entirely anonymous. You can leave your name and details if you want to, but that's entirely up to you. There are a couple of key questions in there that we really, you know, in fact, each question is important, but there are some things we want to know. You know, how often do you want to see WordFest? And to date, we're currently seeing, I think we're at around 12% of all respondents want to see WordFest on a monthly basis.
Is that like the full 24-hour event on a monthly basis, or
Yeah, if I could just say right now that won't be happening.
So thank you, but we will not be doing it monthly. However, we do deliver this event, WPLDN, every single month. So I think it is almost a little bit of a trimmed down version of it. You know, we have 2 or 3 speakers every single month. A great opportunity. After the speakers have finished this evening or this afternoon or this morning, wherever you are, we'll actually be heading back into the social, and we'll be, you know, we've got the same table functionality over there, so we'll be able to jump on our tables, move about, and have those conversations as we were in WordFest. I also just wanted to very quickly mention, if you are wanted to keep up to date with the stories that were being published post the event, wordfest.live/press. We're collecting all the URLs, all the details as people are publishing things in relation to WordFest. And we've had a fantastic write-up. Robert Jacoby has published a Between Sessions post on there. There's a link on that page. Highly recommend having a read of it. He's done a great job. This was his Between Sessions posts were traditionally saved for the in-person events, but we're very grateful he's taken the time to put some details together for our virtual event. Okay, and speaking of our virtual events, we wanted to just very quickly say that we announced in December, I believe it was, that WPLDN would remain virtual for at least the first 6 months of 2021. Given the information that we have right now, given the current situation within the UK, we have made the decision to move forward with delivering virtual events for the remainder of 2021. So for the next 11 months, we don't generally do them in December, for the next 11 months, all of our events will be delivered virtually. We feel that it's the most appropriate thing to do, given the situation, given the information that we have to hand. Of course, if you know, things do change in the latter part of the year, then of course we'll keep you updated in relation to that. Also, just wanted to mention a number of other events that we're running through this platform at the moment: PHP London, Leeds PHP, and DPIP. All of these events and others are being delivered through the platform that you're on right now, live.bigorangeheart.org. If you are a meetup organizer and you are still trying to figure out how you're going to deliver your events, your virtual events, have a conversation with us. Hit bigorangeheart.org. You can connect with us on the contact page. We're actually offering the platform free of charge to organizations that fit with the ethos of Big Orange Heart. So provided your event is free, provided you are there to encourage the communities to come together, then we can actually deliver the platform free of charge for you. So if that is of interest, then do let us know. Okay, I think we've gone on a little bit. We're just 3 minutes over on our timeline.
That's not bad for us.
That's not actually. So what I'm going to do is invite Mark Wilkinson to come and join us on stage. Mark, welcome.
Hi, Mark.
Good evening, everybody. Hi there.
Thank you so much for joining.
Happy New Year, I guess.
Happy
Yeah.
New Year!
Absolutely.
I never know when you to stop saying that.
That's right. Yes. I think what I want to do is to jump really quickly, because I appreciate obviously you've got your talk to deliver, but I just wanted to mention your WP Cafe and just congratulations. Fantastic job
Thank
that you've
you.
been doing. Right. I don't know if you have any more details you wanted to share at all.
Yeah, and at the moment we tend to run a monthly event. We're thinking of changing that to sort of as and when we think they're appropriate, rather than sticking to sort of one a month. So you might see either more come along in one go, if you like. But next month's event's going to be all about WordPress security. We've got a couple of guests lined up. Not quite ready to announce them yet, but we'll certainly be doing that in the next few days. And looking forward to getting people to watch along. Hope people are enjoying it. I think the idea is just to sort of discuss popular WordPress topics. And the thing was that, myself and Keith, who was another part of High Rise Digital, we're a small team. We're not a big agency. So we wanted to sort of keep the discussion around to sort of freelance things that will help freelancers and small teams. And that was kind of the basis of all the sort of chats. Not necessarily the most optimum and best way of doing things, because sometimes they're just too expensive for the clients that we have. So it's about, chatting about things that will really help people like us and agencies like us and our clients as well. So hopefully people will find it good. Excellent.
Well, certainly, the ones I've been able to listen to so far, they've been, the content has been absolutely spot on. So thank you very much. Excellent. Okay, but of course you're here tonight to share your talk, how to build websites that stand the test of time. So I'm going to bring your slides up now.
Thank you.
We're going to drop off. We're going to hand the stage over to you. But before we do that, I just wanted to quickly mention, if you have any questions for Mark, he is going to be running a live Q&A session at the end of his talk. So please, if you're in live.bigorangeheart.org, do drop the questions in there. We'll then get them up on the screen for Mark to answer afterwards. But for now, Mark, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. So, I'm going to talk to you this evening about building websites that stand the test of time and how we sort of go about doing that at High Rise Digital. So, as I said, my name's Mark. I am the co-owner and developer at High Rise Digital. So I've been using WordPress for a long time. It must be 10, 12, 13 years now. And so I've got a bit of experience with it. Now, when we build websites at High Rise, we really focus on three things, and that is speed. So making sure that sites we build are really fast, making sure they're really easy to manage. So the editing experience for users is nice and slick and quick and easy to get content up. And last but not least, they are built to last. And that's really what we're going to focus on in this talk. So they're built to last and they stand the test of time. And this sort of idea here started because we kept getting lots of inquiries come through. And I'm sure you've had these too. So, inquiries like, oh, we've had our site for 6 to 12 months and it was great to start with, but it just isn't working for us anymore. And we can't do this and we're struggling to do this. And there's a number of things we want to change, but we're struggling. Can you help? And usually our answer is, well, we'll have a look and we can see. And then when you actually look into the site, it is a bit of a mess and, it's got some problems. So what we wanted to do was to make sure that, sites that we build are not going to leave people down the test of time. So this is a fictional graph. It's not any actual numbers in here, but it just tries to give you an idea of the green obviously is where the projects cost more. Let's say client is starting at 0 on the left where they want to build a new website. And you can see the green sort of triangle, it's costing them £7,000, but it's going to last for 4 years. Whereas the blue triangles, which are behind that, are sort of a cheaper project, but they just don't last as long. And perhaps they're being put into that situation, which I mentioned before, where things are starting to go wrong a little bit earlier. And you can see that, they're costing £4,000 and they're lasting for a couple of years. And hopefully you can see that over the course of the 8 years that's in this particular graph, you can see that even though the projects cost more in that sort of green triangles, the overall cost is less because the projects are lasting longer. Now, we want to build our sites to last longer than 4 years, of course, but I just wanted to give you an idea that sometimes when you're paying a little bit more, you get a better quality of build, and that's actually providing you better investment in the long term. So this talk, we're going to look at some of the key concepts that we use and try and stick to when we're trying to build websites that stand the test of time. Now, this is not all code-based. This is some general things. There is some stuff in there about code as well, obviously, because that comes into play when you're building a website. So as I said, on the graph we've just seen, the green sort of triangles were showing the best return on investment, because they were spending less over the same amount of time and hopefully getting a better product as well. So we're always trying to provide the best return on investment that we can for our clients. We're striving to do that as much as we can. And a lot of the sort of cheaper website solutions, they might only last 12 to 18 months. And therefore, the client, has to sort of move on from that afterwards. And whether that investment's wasted or not is difficult to say. But certainly, they find themselves having to invest and invest and invest all the time, and never having something that's actually quite stable for them. Now, better return on investment doesn't necessarily mean it's more expensive. It depends on the circumstances of the client. So there may be examples whereby you want to just spend a small amount of money up front and get something up quick and cheap. And an example there would be, let's say a company has changed their branding and their name and what they offer. They've completely, refocused. And it might be really important to them that they get something up quickly, cheaply and fast, so that the website reflects their new brand and new company. And that might be one instance where, that, it doesn't matter if it's only going to last 6 months. It just needs to be done quickly to get that message across to everybody. So providing a better return on investment is going to be crucial and important for everybody. Everybody wants more for the money, and that's going to help. So planning. The old saying, so if you fail to plan, then you're just planning to fail. And this, for me, is one of the most important things when you are building websites. You need to make sure that planning phase is absolutely spot on. And I'm not entirely sure whether everyone always has a rock solid planning session when they're actually thinking about building a new website for clients. Now, if you're building a one-page website, a full-on planning session might not be necessary, but you still need some sort of planning as to what the project's going to be. And we now insist on a planning, or what we call a project discovery phase, for all the projects we do, well, all but the very smallest projects that we do. And that's where we get the chance to sit down, well, not in today's world, but maybe through a video call like this at the moment, and really get to know the client, really get to know what they're trying to achieve, and ultimately plan out what they actually want. Because a lot of the time, clients have in their head what they want to deliver or what they want delivered. And what they need to do is to get that out of their head and onto the table so everybody else is in the same position. Otherwise, you end up delivering something that they didn't really want. So it's really important to plan so that everyone's on the same page. And that planning phase requires asking lots and lots and lots and lots of questions. So many questions, actually. You need to know as much as you can about your client, about their business, about the way they run their business, about what they want a new website for, what features they want and why, what functionality they want and why. And it's only when you know as much as possible that you can actually start to plan the website or project that is going to meet their needs. And again, asking those questions not only gives you the chance to get the answers to those questions, but it enables the client to start thinking about what they actually want as well. So this is a really, really important process. And sometimes it'd be quite painful because you're asking so many questions, but everyone that we've done this with has really come out of projects thinking, actually, that was a really, really important part of the project. If we hadn't have had that planning and project discovery at the start, then we would have made decisions that are wrong decisions for going forward. And of course, decisions that you take at the start will have implications further down the line. So it's really important that we try and understand as much as we can, so that the decisions we make are going to have a limited impact should we want to sort of change direction further down the line. So the more you know at the start, and the more you know by asking questions, then the better that's going to be. And part of the planning and part of the project discovery is about educating your clients, because we really do try to give our expertise and our knowledge in that process. We're the experts. We know how to build websites. We know how to deliver these projects for clients, and we can give some solid advice as to what would be best for the client based on what they want. So, we like to educate clients on the implications of decisions. Well, actually, if you take that decision, that could end up costing more in the future, because you're going to have to do X, Y, and Z. It depends, but so you really should be in the position of informing and educating clients about the decisions they're taking, whether what they actually want is going to do the job of what they actually want to solve, if that makes sense. A lot of the times we've said, we want a slider on the homepage, or we want a chatbot to be integrated. And when you actually drill into the details as to why they want that thing, it doesn't actually solve the problem. It's kind of, they thought that would solve the problem of what they wanted to do. So again, asking those questions, really drilling into the whats and the whys as to what they want to do and why is super, super important. So an example of something like that is we often create team pages on websites, or meet the team pages. And there's a number of ways of doing that. So with the new block editor, you could literally just create blocks, and depending on how you want to present them, you could put an image and so forth. But we often work a lot with recruitment sites, and what they want to do is they want to attach a team member to a job to say, look, this is the consultant for this job. So in that instance, it would be much better to create like a post type for team members, and then you can assign those different posts to other posts and make connections with them. And then the data's in one place and can be reused. So that's one example where you'd really want to drill down into what they want to do with that part of the website and how they want to sort of develop that in the future. And there's obviously all sorts of opportunities like that once you start talking to clients and once you start having those conversations. So planning, asking questions, really talking to the client, trying to get as much understanding as you can about what they're trying to achieve, what the goals are, and obviously how you want to go about trying to tackle that is super, super important. I really can't state that's important. It's probably the most important part of any project. So the next one is looking at project management. So it's not kind of directly related to sort of delivering a website, I guess, but project management leads, good project management and a project that is well managed leads to a better outcome. It is, if you've got a project that's well managed, it's going to lead to a better outcome, a better project, a better website for the clients. A project that's poorly managed is more likely to fall apart halfway through. It's more likely to have produced a poor outcome, and therefore that poor outcome is not going to stand the test of time. So having solid project management is super duper important, and making sure that works well. So we use for project management, and there's all sorts of tools to do this. We use Trello, nice and simple way of managing projects. And we have sort of a tried and tested method on a Trello board. Here's an example of like a boilerplate board. And we've wrote blog posts, there's a link there all about it, how we use Trello to manage projects. And it's super, super easy. The thing with project management is you don't want to make it too hard, or people won't want to do it like that, if that makes sense. So if the tools and processes that you're using just seem too onerous, people will just bypass those tools. They'll forget to use them, they'll get lazy, and then things will start to get missed. So we try and make our processes as simple as possible. And Trello for us, and I'm sure a lot of you that are watching use Trello, it's a superb tool, is the best, easiest tool. And it's super simple for clients to just understand what we're doing and how we use it. So you can see with this board on the left-hand column, we've got some a reference column. So we put in here things that we need to sort of refer to throughout the project. So we'll have the project specification links, some guidelines about how to use Trello and stuff. And we also put things like links to team meetings that might take place every week, which we usually have a meeting every week with clients that we're working on. The backlog column is just kind of like every task that needs to be done in this project. So the first part of a project after sort of sign off is to sort of split everything up into different tasks, and they just go into that backlog column. And then the next priorities column, we try and keep that to a limiting of 10. And as I said, we have a weekly call with clients, and that call is partly to say which tasks are we going to cover this week, or whatever the time scale might be. And then, as you can see, they move to in progress when they get started. They get assigned to a particular person. Discussion can happen on those cards. Attachments can happen, etc. So we've got a record of what was discussed. And importantly, what was discussed and why. So if decisions were made, then why were they made like that? And we can always then refer back to them as well. Had a one today with a site gone live, and there was a question about something. Oh, we've seen something on the site. Can we change it? We want it to be like this, and we had to refer back to our decisions in the project management phase here to realise that we made that decision for a really valid reason, and then that was being able to be picked up, so we didn't suddenly break something. Once something's done, it can move to the review column. It be reviewed by the interested parties, whether that's the developer, the designer, the client, and so forth. And then once everyone's happy that that's been tested, etc., it can be dragged over to done. So basically, cards move from left to right, and that works really well. And as I said, it's really simple for everyone to understand. There's no great barrier to entry with the project management, which I don't know, some systems to me seem a bit too complicated, and they get a little bit onerous to use. Next bit is documentation. Making sure that you document as much as you possibly can. And as I said, the Trello board is great for this in terms of the decisions that we make. We can document them on cards and have that discussion about what was done and why, which is really important. Because you don't want to get halfway through your project and then start wondering, thinking like, I want to change this, but then I can't really remember why we did it like that. It's really important to have that sort of history to look back and think about what we did and why we did it. So you can document how things are done, how content is managed, how clients manage the website, so that everyone knows what's going on. Really important stuff. We also use a lot of video documentation. So if we're showing clients how to do something with their website, you know, how to actually build contents and stuff, then we show a lot of little videos to show them how to do that. It's so much more powerful, much easier than sort of writing a big set of notes for them. It's just to record a little screencast so that they can actually see that, and also they get to refer back to it. And to do that, we use Soapbox from Wistia, which is free. It has a Chrome extension, and you can just basically press record, choose your camera, choose your mic, and off you go. And once you save that, you get a little editing experience as well, where you can flip between the camera and your screen. It's nice and simple. And we've had some really positive feedback from clients about using this to show progress throughout the project. Because sometimes projects happen and you know, you don't want to be going a long period of time where the client doesn't hear from you. And as developers, you know, we have that. You get stuck into something and it takes time to build. It might take 2 or 3 days, and the client hasn't like actually contacted you, haven't spoken them for a few days. And sometimes it's like, well, is there anything going on? Are they actually doing anything? So we love to keep our clients up to date with little video messages about progress that we've made, particularly if there's something to demonstrate for them and show them. And as I said, they can refer back to those in the future if it's something that is something that they're going to have to look back on and produce and maybe share with other colleagues as well. So that's one way that we document some of the stuff. Another way is commenting your code. Now this is one of my bugbears. If you follow me on Twitter, then you've probably seen me writing tweets about commenting code. And I realize this is quite a hot topic, so not everyone agrees with me. But for me, commenting your code is absolutely crucial. You don't want to look back at your code and have to wonder why you did it and spend, 15, 20 minutes trying to work out what was going on with a piece of code. If you've commented it, it'll take you, 3 or 4 minutes rather than that 20 to be able to understand what it's doing. And you're not only commenting it for your future self, which obviously is super, super important, you're commenting it for your colleagues, so anyone else in your team that needs to look at what you've done. But it also makes the project last longer, because if other developers have to come in the future, then they're going to be able to understand what's happening in your code faster. And if you can do that faster, it's much likely that it's going to cost less for the client if they're having to obviously pay for other things to happen. We do a lot of integrations with recruitment websites, so we have to jump into their websites and understand how things are working so that we can carry out those integrations with external services. And it's so much easier with a nicely commented code that is beautifully laid out and easy to read than it is with code that's not very nice and easy to read and has no comments in it at all. So, I'm passionate about commenting code. I comment everything. Literally everything, and I know a lot of people will disagree with me on that. What's the point in commenting too much? It wastes time, but I disagree. I think it's going to save time in the long run, the small amount of time that it will take you. I also think it helps you as a developer, because pretty much before every line of code I write a comment, and the comment is what I want to do, and it kind of works as a bit of pseudocode. Planning out what you're trying to do, and helps you in that way. So I think commenting code is super, super important. And I would highly recommend you do it. The next sort of principle or thing we look at doing is writing extensible code. Now, extensible code is code that can be extended upon, and that can be altered in some form of way or another. And there's lots of ways to do this. So all the WordPress is essentially extensible. It allows us to add plugins, add themes, and add functionality without changing WordPress itself. Obviously, if we change WordPress core code, as soon as WordPress gets updated, it gets overwritten. So we like to write the code as extensively as possible. Again, it's going to future-proof that code so that if someone wants to interact with it in the future, we have provided opportunities in that code base for them to do just that. There's lots of ways to write extensible code. That's a completely separate topic. I've spoken about it before. You'll probably find those online, probably on our YouTube channel as well. And I'll cover a couple of quick things. So code where you're using like function exists to make sure that you're not sort of outputting functions that are not there for some reason. Maybe there's a plugin been switched off, etc. Things like that. Obviously, using WordPress's hooks, that's actions and filters. So actions, adding those into the code base so that other developers have points in the code where they can output stuff. And filters, allowing other developers to change data in your code at various points in your code, maybe where you're doing a query or where you're passing data back to something, various points in that. But if you allow those opportunities for developers, it makes your code base much more extensible. Also, things like template overrides. So you might provide some templates, but other developers can override them in the future if they wanted to. And all that sort of stuff is going to be better for building a product that stands the test of time. If you think about some of the most popular plugins, if they didn't have extensible options for you and me and everyone that uses them, they wouldn't really be as popular, because we'd all use something else because we can't do what we want to do with them. So writing extensible code is absolutely crucial for me and for us as a team to make sure that that can be used in the future by either yourself or obviously others that might want to play and interact with the website. Next one is security type stuff. So secure coding practices. It goes without saying, but code that isn't secure is not going to stand the test of time, because it's got more likelihood of getting hacked and abused, and therefore people are going to have problems with the website. Now, I'm not going to stand here and say every piece of code I write is ultimate security, because I'm sure it's not. But we really do follow the best WordPress coding security principles that are out there. You know, sanitizing, escaping, all that sort of stuff. It's a massive topic, is security. As we mentioned at the start, we're going to be chatting as an episode of W Cafe about that. So if you're interested in security, then join us on that one. That'd be good. And there's also loads of resources out there. And WordPress has lots of functions that really help make your code more secure. There's lots of stuff built in that's done for you, and you just kind of have to use it, and it makes it more secure. So I'd really recommend that you read up about the secure coding practices that you should be using. And that's really going to make your projects stand the test of time. If it stands up to abuse by hackers or whatever, then it's going to last a lot longer than something that isn't as secure. So super important. Doing things the WordPress way. Just have to have a drink. So this is a hot topic as well, because a lot of non-WordPress people would probably argue, and a lot of WordPress people actually, that a lot of the things that WordPress does, it kind of does them the wrong way. This sort of MVC model is kind of something that WordPress doesn't really do very well. But my point here is kind of like, just don't reinvent the wheel. If WordPress already has a function to do something, then use it, you know, because it's 99% of the time it's going to be the best way of doing it, because like there's lots of clever people who build WordPress and contribute to that code base, have obviously exhausted all the different ways of doing something, and that's the one that they've chosen. So it's likely that it's going to be the best way of doing it. And not only that, if you're using what WordPress provides, so let's, for example, you want to query something, you know, WP query is a class in WordPress that allows you to do that. Don't roll your own, because WordPress is going to give you lots of goodness with its own one. Like, it's going to add caching into it that you won't need to worry about, lots of other stuff, and security as well. So it's going to make sure that the code that you use with that is going to be nice and clean, like sanitizing things and so on. So really try not to reinvent the wheel. If there's something there that already does what you want to do, then you probably use it. There may be the odd reason why you wouldn't want to, but essentially 99% of the time you should be. So do things the WordPress way, and try not to sort of come outside of that too much. Is something that I'd argue is a good thing that would help your website stand the test of time. Also, backward compatibility as well. WordPress, it certainly used to be backwards compatible. I think it still is. Maybe someone can correct me on that. But there's this concept that we won't introduce something that's going to break old sites. So if you've used a WordPress function or class to do something, and then WordPress updates, it's likely that's still going to work. Whereas if you'd rolled your own, the way you've done it might break with something. So I think that's a really important concept as well. Last but not least, we've got what we call tried and tested third-party tools. Now, we all probably use third-party tools. So I'm talking plugins, possibly themes, when we're building WordPress websites. And it's important that you pick the right ones. And third-party stuff's good to use. It often reduces the cost for clients because you don't have to build that sort of thing. And therefore, it can be a good thing. But you've really got to be careful what you choose. So I think a good example of this is forms. So a lot of websites, not all, but have forms. So, you know, contact forms, application forms, sometimes really complex forms that people have to fill in. And that is a whole project in itself almost, is building something that will allow your clients to build forms and set conditional logic, etc. So it makes no sense for us to want to include all of that into the project when there are so many excellent form plugins out there. We use Gravity Forms, but again, there's lots of them out there. And we know that that is a tried and tested solution. It has a solid development team who provide excellent support, and it's got thousands of users using it. So if something should go awry with it, it's going to be fixed pretty quickly. So making sure that if you're going to use third-party tools, they're tried and tested, and they're going to stand the test of time. They're not going to just disappear. And it's also worth pointing out to the client, and we do this in all our proposals, we have a section on the third-party tools that we're going to use. It's usually a list of plugins. And what we do is we sort of have a section basically saying that, if we have a license for it, they can use that. But if they ever wanted to move away from us, they'd need to purchase their own license. And we obviously put the current cost in and explain how that works for them. Just being nice and transparent that, you're not building that thing, you're using it from something else. This is why we're using it. And this is what might happen in the future if you wanted to move away. So that's me. done. Hopefully you learned a little bit about how to build websites that stand the test of time. So as I said, I'm Mark Wilkinson. I'm the co-owner of High Rise Digital. I am a WordPress developer and have been for a while. I'm currently, well, not currently because we can't play, but I was a golf addict for the last 6 months or so, really getting into it. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, on Instagram, or if you want to follow High Rise, then please feel free to do so. That would be awesome. So thank you for your time. And if you have any questions, I will do my very best to answer them for you. Although, as I said, I've not necessarily have the answers. So yeah, thanks for watching, everybody.
Mark, thank you very much. Just, I think, an incredible amount of gold dust through all of that, dotted throughout the whole session there. It really is. And, you know, some really key important subject matter across this. And I'm just going to take off your slides, and we've got some questions that have come up. And let me just pull you in. Where's Paul? And so I'll just bring everybody in.
Yep.
Yes, so many things coming across this. I think it was really interesting going right back to the start of what you were talking there about, you know, planning and, you know, getting things, you know, having those conversations with your clients. I know I've certainly had some conversations with clients, less and less client work now, but, you know, some of our historical stuff, we were having conversations with clients where we were ending up knowing more about their business than I ever expected to know. And I think that you're almost kind of getting to that point of partnership, aren't you? I mean, it's
Absolutely.
a partnership.
Yeah.
It's there to deliver something.
Yeah, and I think the project discovery phase as well, like you say, it builds that partnership and that trust, and it gets the client into thinking that we're all a big team and we're all trying to build the project together. It's not like you hiring me and we hiring this. Everyone's in this together and we're all trying to build this thing together. So making sure that everybody understands how everything works is just really critical and really crucial. And sometimes, you know, we've asked questions where the clients thought, I don't know how that works, or I don't know the answer to that. And then they've gone away and then understood it even better for themselves, you know. Yep. So yeah, really important phase, I think, really important.
Absolutely.
I've learned over the years as well that you know, kind of don't skimp on the discovery phase, because otherwise it costs you time later on in a project. Some of the time you have clients and they're really eager, they want to sort of see you off and running straight away. And I always say to people, don't skimp on the discovery phase, because the time you spend here will save you in man hours, you know, 10 times over sometimes, you know, kind of down the road.
We've had a question come in from Elliot in the live chat, asking, out of interest, when you're asking those questions, how do you record discovery conversations? Pen, paper, digitally, video, etc. I think you touched in this in your talk, but it's just
yeah. So I think these discovery sessions are always best to have face to face, but obviously we can't do that at the moment. So if it was face to face, then yeah, we'd be pen and paper, we'd be making notes, etc., and so forth. But we've done a lot of these actually over video calls, and obviously you can record them, and we obviously ask the client if we want to record them as well, and we can then usually they take place where we all join a video call, we ask loads of questions, take loads of notes, and then we obviously write those up and then present those, and then drafted them, and then they get refined, etc., etc. But yeah, recording the calls is fine. Obviously ask the client before you do that. It's important, but most say, yeah, that's a great idea, and we'd record those and that, and do it that way. But we'd usually have more than one session on when it's online, you know, because otherwise, like sitting on a call like this for 4 hours or whatever it's going to be, it's just no fun for anyone. So we try and break it down into small steps, and then we'd have a number of different calls, and then the end product is a document. You know, this is what we're building. This is what everyone has agreed we're building, and therefore everyone knows. You know, that's what we're heading towards, and everyone's going in the same direction, basically.
Yeah. I think we come with our own, obviously we come with our own expertise and our own knowledge and understanding of the services that we're delivering, and clients, I think, can often come with their own perception of those skills, and through that discovery process you can often educate, can't you, and actually end up in a situation where they're considering delivering their end product in a very different way because of the skills that we can then impart with them through that process.
Absolutely. We've had discovery sessions with clients where they've started wanting one thing and not quite ended up having something completely different, but pretty much, you know, the end the end product that we've all agreed on is not really what they started off wanting, because what they actually wanted wouldn't have solved the problems that they were trying to solve.
Absolutely.
I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that means you have to sometimes say, well, no, that's the wrong way of doing it. Or, you have to be a bit harsh sometimes and say, we're not just going to say yes to everything you say, because that's not the right thing to do. Absolutely.
And it was really interesting that you're getting into the conversation about commenting code. Certainly brought up there's some comments from the audience. I just bring up it takes about 4.5 years. It's really interesting though, isn't it? When does commenting become too much commenting, and how much and how do you do it? What structure? There's so many factors to this. And Elliot brought up about the need for us to be using sorry, I've completely lost the where is it? There it is. Oh, sorry, Leo, we're both pressing the same button.
Elliot's question was commented code before, and then I've done this. You write that comment, and then you sit there and you go, what on earth did I say? What earth did I? It's like when you write it shorthand, and you then got to remember what your shorthand at the time was, which made sense at the time, but it didn't now.
Yeah, I think that's the thing with comments. Like if it's obvious, if it's a conditional, you don't have to write what the conditional is, because that's really clear. But if it's not something that you can read, and I think even err on the side of caution, even if you go that's obvious, I think maybe sometimes comment it anyway, because 6 months down the line it might not be obvious. But
it's obvious to you, but it might not be obvious to someone else.
Yeah.
So I'd always err on the side of comment even the stuff you think is obvious, because it might not be obvious to someone else.
Yeah, and as everybody's pointed out as well, the next poor sod that comes along might actually be you. 6 months later, going, what?
It's that time when you go, who wrote this dreadful code? And then you realise that the culprit is sitting in the seat you're sitting in.
We've all done.
I think Elliot's comments are about the dot block and using that structure. Entirely important. I shared a link actually in the live chat. So if you're in live.bigorangeheart.org and you're not familiar with dot block, take a look at the link that I shared earlier on.
Yeah, but I think that's great. We tend to use that as well. But don't worry if you sat watching this thing. I don't know what dot block is, and I've got to go and learn that. Like, just literally just write a comment above your code, like what it does and what it's supposed to do. People can read it. It works. It's fine. It's better than nothing.
Absolutely. And I think Keith had mentioned also, getting into commenting CSS as well, and making sure I find myself commenting inline, commenting all over the place, and then trying to figure out what on earth I was actually commenting about sometimes.
And with JavaScript and CSS, obviously, it just gets stripped out when you compile it, so it's kind of completely free. That's the time you have to write it, but yeah.
Well, Mark, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, your wisdom, an awful lot of experience there that you've been able to share with us, with the community. So I really appreciate your time this evening.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. Enjoyed it.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
You're more than welcome to obviously continue to join us. We are going to, after the next session, we're going to drop into the social. So if you're about, feel free to join us. But appreciate, obviously, this is, we're eating into family time as well. So appreciate the time this evening.
Cheers.
Take care. Okay, we're now going to invite Graham. Let's just take Mark off. And Graham, we're going to invite you up onto the stage. Graham, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi everyone. Yeah,
Hi.
hope you're having Yes. Good talk, Mark. Thank you.
Yes, excellent. Good to see you as always, Graham. Really appreciate having you join us every time within WPLDN. Obviously, we've been long-term companions across this event. So
Indeed, yes, and yes. Okay, please share my screen is the instruction. I will do that now. Sorry.
For anyone who's not familiar with Graham, Graham is accessibility consultant, and is giving his talk this evening, asking the question whether our WordPress websites are accessible or not. And if you have any questions, if you're on live.bigorangeheart.org, please do ask the questions in the live chat. We will be having a live Q&A session after Graham has delivered his talk. For now, we've got your slides, Graham, so I'm just going to bring those up on the screen. We're all going to drop off. As I've mentioned, if anybody does have any questions, then do just drop them into live chat. But for now, Graham, it's over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Right, yes, well, as you can probably see, hopefully you can see, if you can see, my presentation's called So How Do I Know If My WordPress Website Is Accessible? It's a presentation I've delivered a number of times, but actually I've recently updated it, and so this is a fresh version with some changes in it and everything like that. So before I carry on though, I want to just mention a bit about myself. I know a lot of you, as Diane mentioned, I've been coming to WordPress London for a long time now, so a lot of you I probably know anyway. But if you're not familiar with me, I'm a web accessibility consultant. A lot of people scratch their head when I tell them that. My day job though is to help people in organizations and small businesses and individuals as well, just improve the accessibility of their website. I test websites for accessibility, and I run sessions for developers, training sessions I do quite a lot these days, and also work with development teams when required to help improve the digital products that they're producing. So I'm also a WordPress developer. I have built quite a few websites, lots of accessible websites over the years using WordPress. I've been using that for about 10 years now, and I don't do so much development now, but I have just finished a project that I was working on for a while, a revamp for someone's site. So I've contributed to WordPress core in the past for mainly accessible features. It's not all I want to talk about, but it's what I do most of the time. So that's a bit about me anyway. Okay. Firstly, before I get started on the nitty-gritty, just want to talk a bit about why accessibility is important. I know that some of you understand this anyway, but the aim here is if you're a WordPress developer working for yourself or for an agency or something like that, you're building websites for people. They're selling their products and services. So it's important that we can make our websites as accessible as possible, so that as many people as possible can see what we're offering and potentially buy what we're offering as well. And it's about bums on seats, really. So that's why it's important. There are some legal aspects as well, more so in the United States than here, but a lot of companies are getting sued for accessibility problems. Now, the reason why I'm showing you this picture, which it is based in London, so some of you may recognize it. It's the ramp that goes up from the northern end of the Millennium Bridge across the Thames up to St Paul's Cathedral. You can see in the distance there. And it was built, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago or something like that, when, or maybe even longer than that, 20, where it's around the time of the Millennium Bridge, I suppose. But it's a staircase in most of the parts of it, but the people who built it put this ramp in, and I'm sure that they thought that was there for people in wheelchairs and people with pushchairs and buggies and what have you. But standing here on that staircase, as I was a couple of years ago when I took this picture, you can actually see that the majority of people who use this path actually prefer to use the ramp rather than actually walking up the steps. And it's kind of like, it's a thing with accessibility improvements you make to your website, is that actually it ends up helping lots of people, not just the people you're specifically targeting. And so it can help everybody, really. So it's like why we're doing this. Okay, so what I'm going to cover. Some of you may have heard of WCAG. It stands for Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. The latest version is 2.1, and it's a huge resource on web accessibility, and it's got a series of checkpoints. And when I'm reviewing websites for accessibility, I can do more formal audits, and I'm looking at the WCAG 2.1 checkpoints and to see whether or not the website passes those things. However, if you're not familiar with the territory, it can be quite hard to interpret. It almost seems as though you need to understand accessibility to actually interpret some of it. So what I've decided to do, or when I wrote this presentation, is to give people a simple yes/no checklist that they can do tests on their own websites or other people's websites if they want to. Things that are easy to check with some free tools. And so that's what we're going to cover. And I will just say I've got about half an hour, so I can only cover some accessibility issues. But what I've pulled out is some common and serious accessibility problems that I've found in many of the websites that I've been looking at over the last few years. And as it says there, if you can answer all these questions correctly, your website is going to be a lot more accessible than a lot of websites out there. Sadly, there are still many inaccessible websites. So let's get cracking. The first few points I'm going to talk about are to do with keyboard interaction, a very important part of the scene. The reason why keyboard accessibility is so important is because some people who have an impairment or disability, they can't use a mouse or a trackpad or a touch command, and they may actually just rely on their keyboard to use their machines. That's not just browsing websites, that's using everything on their machines, whether it's their laptop or their desktop or whatever. Okay, and the other thing to note as well is that if I'm using a screen reader, typically I would be blind if I was using a screen reader, but not exclusively. Some people with cognitive impairments use them as well. Though on a laptop and a desktop, they're going to be operated by keystrokes as well. So keyboard accessibility is vital for those reasons. So here's the first two questions of my yes/no answer quiz. First one, can I easily see where keyboard focus is? And the second one, can I easily access all parts of the site using the keyboard only? Here we're talking about navigation, right? Two really key points, things that you can test just by using the tab key and where relevant, the enter key, etc. Okay, so here's a good example. It's not a WordPress site, I will give you. gov.uk is a famous website in the UK filled with resources about all kinds of things to do with government, finance, driving licenses, passports, etc., etc. It's won prizes for its design, and it's also a very good website for accessibility. What I'm showing you here is that one of the links here has keyboard focus. The links generally have a white underline under them here, these ones at the top, but I've tabbed to this link here about travel advice about COVID-19, and you'll notice that it's got a very bright yellow background with the black text on top of it. And so if I'm a sighted keyboard user and I'm tabbing around your site, I will thank you to make keyboard focus very obvious. People who use the mouse all the time or touch devices all the time, they may not even consider keyboard focus, but some people rely on this. Okay, next one. This is a company that I do a lot of work for, Hassle Inclusion, and this once again has clear keyboard focus everywhere, but now I'm bringing in the second question, can I get to everywhere on the site easily? And you'll notice there are drop-down menus here, and this sub-navigation is fully accessible to keyboard users as well. And it's amazing how many sites out there where this is just not true. An example of that would be here, once again, not a WordPress site, but it's a good one to use as an example, the Odeon Cinemas site. I've got hovering over the what's on link at the top here, and what I'm getting is this sort of grey panel, or I'm being shown with a search facility there and lots of links to various places on the site. So that's fine. I'm also getting a focus like some indication that that's the one that I'm interacting with. However, this is what it looks like if I tab around the page and I've tabbed to the what's on link. What I'm not seeing is I'm not seeing that panel with all the links on it, and it can be a lot harder for keyboard users to actually get to those parts of the Odeon Cinemas website. There's no focus indication either anywhere on this site, and so it can be a really tough site to get around if you're a sighted keyboard user. The next two questions. Number 3, does the keyboard tab order make sense? Now, I haven't got a screenshot on this one, but it's kind of obvious. If you're tabbing around the page and keyboard focus is obvious, you want it to go around in a logical way. Otherwise, it just gets really confusing. If it starts at the top of the screen, goes down to the bottom, and then jumps up to the top again, that's not very good at all. The fourth question, can I easily access all functionality with the keyboard only? I'm not talking about navigation here because I covered that already, but this is where I've got buttons on the page that do some action, maybe trigger some functionality or calculation or trigger a modal or something like that. Now, a lot of websites out there, unfortunately, have things that aren't keyboard accessible. And this is an example. This is a WordPress website that's using a Lightbox plugin, and these images on the page here, I can click on them. They're sort of thumbnail images, and it will show me a larger version of the image. I can also tab down to it, press the enter key, and then it shows me the larger version of the image. The problem with this particular plugin is that keyboard focus has stayed on the underlying page, and so keyboard users are now stuck because they've got this big fat image right in front of them, but they're not if they're tabbing, you can see the underlying page moving up and down behind them, behind the image here. So that's not great as well. Another example, this is the Jetpack website, and generally it's pretty good for accessibility, this site, but it's got a language selector up here, and here I've tabbed to it, and if I then press the enter key to go into the language selector, this is the panel that I get, and I can choose from these languages, but not if I'm a keyboard user, because focus is actually still on the underlying page. So it's very difficult to actually change the language on this site if you're a keyboard only user. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about keyboard interaction. Let's talk about links. First one here, question 5, are your links obviously links? It's well, let's make links look like links. In the olden days of the web, 20-25 years ago, it was a convention that all links on your pages would have underlines, and as is shown on the screenshot on the right there. The one on the left is a WordPress theme that takes away the link underlines by default and will just make the links within your text just a different color. Okay, that's not so easy to see if you're colorblind or people who have poor vision. There is quite a similarity between that green text and the gray text of the content, and so people might miss a lot of those links. See how much easier it is if you've got an underline under those links. Next one about links, do your links provide enough information to state where they lead to? This is kind of helping screen reader users here. So typically, yes, might be people who are blind or other people who rely on screen readers to work. So here's a couple of links from a WordPress site, and you'll see what's going on here. I've got 2 links here. One says click here and the other says click here, and they both take you to 2 different places. Now, as a sighted user, I can probably work out where these links are going to take me because the surrounding content is going to give me the context. However, if I'm a screen reader user, I might be using functionality like this, and this is a screenshot from NVDA, which is a Windows screen reader, and it's showing me a list of all the links on the page, and the 2 in question are here. Now, a lot of people who use screen readers actually will use this listing, and so it's taking all the links on your pages that are completely out of context. So it's quite important to have link text that means something, because if I'm using this functionality, I can actually jump straight to follow that link without actually going back into the underlying page if I want to. And it's quite an easy thing to fix, because I can change the link text here, and so now the links in my NVDA elements list are much more obvious. So it helps screen reader users here. Okay, that's what we want to avoid. Okay, I'm going to talk a bit about images and video now. first one, question 7 then. Do all my images have appropriate alternate text? Okay, now that's a really important thing, because if I'm blind and I'm using a screen reader and I come to an image on the page, the screen reader will tell me that there's an image there, but the only way I'll know what it's showing me is if I've used some kind of alternate text. Okay, and you can test that using a browser extension called Wave, and it's available in Chrome and Firefox. I think it might also be in Edge as well, the new version of Edge, and it shows you what the alternate text for your image is. Where where you've just got images like this, it should be describing what the image is showing or representing. And if you're using the classic editor, when you're adding images to pages in WordPress, you can use the alternative text box here, and that will translate through into the code necessary to help screen reader users. It's a good idea, even if you're providing a caption, still use the alternative text box there as well to make sure that everyone understands what's going on. And here, if you're using Gutenberg, you will be using this sort of setup as well. Okay, now some images are links, and often you'll find this on your blog index page. So it's a list of say the first 10 or whatever blog posts on your site, and the featured image might be shown there. And if you've got an image that's a link, what becomes important then, the alternate text should describe where the image will take me, the link will take me, rather than necessarily what it's showing. So it does it in this particular WordPress theme that I've used on my music website. It actually does this. If you look at the underlying code there, the alt attribute is set to Recording Don't Let Go, which is one of the songs I did. And that image is the link on the page. So the image is the link. There's no text there. So this is the link text now for that image. So some themes do that, which is a good idea, I think. Other themes don't. This is another theme on a test website that I created. And here, once again, is the MVDA list of links. And I've got a link to Koala Bear here, which is actually the featured image for this blog post. The blog post is called ISTC Southern Area, and I just happened to choose a picture of a koala bear, and it's picked up whatever the alternate text was set when the image was added to the site, which was potentially months ago. Okay, this is not appropriate alternate text. So have a look using the Wave plugin at what your alternate text is set to. Next one is about videos. We've all possibly all uploaded videos to YouTube. I've got videos of me doing presentations, and it in fact is a video on YouTube of me doing this very presentation some time ago. And I made sure that all the YouTube captions were as up straight as I could feasibly get them, because obviously people who are deaf or hard of hearing will rely on those captions to understand what it is that I'm actually saying. But actually surveys have discovered that actually it's not just deaf or hard of hearing people that rely on captions as well. Lots of other people do as well. Perhaps if I'm in an environment, it's a noisy environment, or on the train or something like that. You remember the days when we used to travel by train a lot? But there we go. So yeah, make sure you've got captions in all your videos. The next few are around signposting content, and primarily we're helping screen reader users here. Okay, the first one then, question 9. Are your page titles unique and meaningful? This is pretty easy to get right in WordPress, because the page title is the page title at the top there in the browser tab is typically taken from whatever your top level heading is, your page title effectively in your editor. Okay, so that's good. And similarly, in pretty much every theme that I've come across, that actually happens properly. So that's good. But it's easy to test because the browser tabs will show you what the page title is. And you can see that here, the underlying code. It's important for screen reader users because when you arrive at a new page, the page title is actually the first thing that gets read out. Next question. Are you using headings and subheadings? Now, headings are used by screen reader users a lot, and it helps them find sections within the page that they're interested in. And here I'm using the Wave browser extension, and it shows me where the headings are and also the heading levels as well. And people use the heading levels to sort of build up a hierarchy of the headings within the page, so they can think of subsections as well. So you can test that using the Wave extension. Okay, it's important for screen reader users, as I said, because the screen reader tells them what level of the heading is, and also I can jump straight to that heading on the page if I want to. Next one. Are you using landmarks correctly? Now, not a lot of developers necessarily know what landmarks are, but landmarks are predefined areas on the screen. And this is a typical, but not exclusively the only layout for a website. Okay, so you've got banner, navigation, main content, etc., etc. And the landmarks are actually set if you use HTML5 elements like header, nav, main, and aside. It's what these are for. They're there as accessibility things to describe to screen reader users which part of the page you're in. Okay, and most websites are now using HTML5, so let's make sure you get these right. Now, how do you test that, you might be asking? Well, there is a browser extension for that. It's called Landmark Navigation, and it's available once again for Firefox, Chrome, and I think Edge as well. And it will show you all the landmarks on your page. There's a problem with this one though, and this is a WordPress theme. Most important one's missing. There's no main landmark to tell me where the main content is. When you arrive at a page, the first thing you're going to want to look at is the main content of the page. So the main landmark will be what helps you with that. Okay, let's talk about formatting text. Can I resize the text in a page without breaking the layout? This is important for people with poor vision who might want things to be bigger. Okay, so here is an example of some text that's normal text size, and this is what it looks like when I make the text bigger. You can see that screenshot is from 2013. It's from quite a while ago, and it's important to note that in browsers, text resizing and zooming are two different bits of functionality. They kind of do the same stuff, but they are different. And some people use zooming, some people prefer that, some people prefer text resizing. Text resizing just makes the text bigger, but keeps the containers the same size. And that's where the problem here is that these links have spilled out of what's a fixed height box here. So that's something to watch out for. And here's some more examples where I've done some text resizing. This is stuff I found just in the last few months on websites where you're getting clashing or even stuff just disappearing. It's almost impossible to read what's going on there because for some reason some of the things are set to fixed height. The next thing is about fully justified text. Okay, here's a paragraph of text, my paragraph about Exeter that I showed you earlier, and that's what it looks like left aligned, and this is what it looks like fully justified. Obviously, you can do that in your style sheet if you want. Now, this creates extra cognitive load for everybody because what it's doing is it's stretching the gaps between the words. The browser is having to pull the words across to the hard right margin, okay? So what it means is that if on every single line in that paragraph, the words are actually a different distance apart. Okay, on some lines they're stretched apart a lot more, and you end up with, indicated in yellow lines there, you end up with this rivers of white space effect, and this can be make things really difficult for people with dyslexia. And I've got a friend who's has quite significant dyslexia, and she just would not be able to read fully justified text at all because there's these sort of gaps between the words just sort of take over. So watch out if you're using a lot of fully justified text. Okay, user input. So what about forms? I know we got one here. Okay. Do all your form fields have an accompanying label? This is really important primarily for screen reader users, but it's also important for people with motor impairments as well. And you can test this quite easy using the Wave browser extension. And on this particular form, it's giving you these green icons, which are telling you that the form labels are present and associated with the input fields. You need to make them programmatically associated if you're building a theme or a form, so that screen reader users know what the fields are for. Okay, so that's a good one. Sometimes you might be using a plugin. Now, Mark mentioned a gravity forms. I must admit I haven't tested that one recently, but here contact form 7, that's another common plugin that is used. Unfortunately, we're using the default settings. When I tried this, the labels with your name required, being the label here, was not programmatically linked to the input field. So this creates a lot of problems for screen reader users especially. So you can test that with the Wave extension. Okay, the last one around color. The last question then, is color contrast sufficient in your pages? And this affects people with poor vision and also potentially people with color blindness as well. Okay, now this is not a picture of my mother, but she's in her 80s. Both my parents are in their 80s now, and this is her. We're looking at a lot of websites now. She really needs things to be quite obvious what's going on. She is fed up with lots of grays on websites, which used to be the standard for a while. So, you know, make sure you've got good color contrast, and you can test this with a tool. There are lots of tools available. This is my favorite though. You can download it, and I'll give you the link in just a little while. And you can use the color pickers to actually pick out the foreground and the background colors, and it immediately tells you here whether or not the color contrast ratio meets the requirement for the WCAG guidelines. So that's quite useful. And in fact, on this particular website, which I did some work with this company a while ago, pretty much everywhere there was insufficient color contrast. So it's hard for people to read what's going on. Another example, back to our page about Exeter again. Remember we talked about the links here. The links are in this light green color. Well, actually, that green color doesn't have sufficient color contrast against that white background. And here I'm using a browser extension called Axe. It finds similar stuff to what Wave can find, but it's better in some ways because it groups all the accessibility problems together in groups, and there are an awful lot of color contrast problems on this particular page, predominantly with the links. Here we go. Okay, so that's another browser extension that's useful to use. Okay, so here's some, those are the 15 questions that you can ask yourself about your website. Some links. First one there, color contrast analyzer, the one I mentioned. As I mentioned, there's a few, but this is a good one because you download it, and it's a program that you can have on your laptop, and you can use it on images. So if someone passes you a PDF of a design for a website, you can quickly run this contrast analyzer over it without even having to create a web page first. Then the Wave testing tool, you know, Chrome and Firefox, and you can get it from there, or I mean, you know, it's easy to get Chrome and Firefox extensions. The one at the bottom is the Axe testing tool. You can find out more about that there as well, and that one is available for the new Edge at the moment as well. A couple of other links. I talked about getting alternate text right earlier. I wrote a blog about this over 10 years ago now. You can see the date on that one. All the stuff in that blog is still current though. So if you need some help on how to write appropriate alternate text for images when you're editing content, then have a look in there. And then some sections on if you're building a form for yourself or using a plugin or something like that. I've done a few about accessibility and forms. You can find some information about that then. Okay, and there we go. That's the presentation. I'm quite happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Graham, thank you so much. Thank you. Appreciate you giving your time to come and share your experience.
No probs.
Again, a really important topic, a really important subject matter. Let me just bring Diane and Paul back up as well. Yeah, really appreciate you taking the time to do this, to go through this. It's obviously an incredibly important subject matter, and you know, every time we go through these talks, you know, there are so many issues that you know, we can cover and that we need to discuss across this, because obviously it's such a wide subject matter, isn't it? Accessibility.
Yes.
So thank you, and just thank you, obviously, for highlighting this as well, and being such an advocate for web accessibility. It's, particularly
badgering you about it forever. Yeah.
But it's so important. I mean, as you said right at the start, you know, if we spend time focusing on accessibility, it's not just the individuals that require that focus that end up benefiting. Everybody ends up benefiting. So yeah, thank you very much.
Okay.
So yes, we had, let me just pull up first question coming from Matt, and I think it may have actually been answered in the conversation that was going on in the live chat there, but just wanted to highlight it really.
Right.
So if you have a drop down that is a custom link and made dead, the tab skips over it. How can I make sure that the tab doesn't skip over this drop down?
Okay, so drop down is if we're talking drop down menus here, and made a link dead. I'm not quite sure exactly what Matt means by that there. Sometimes what you can do is normally links would be part of a tab order in a page, but there are two things that I can immediately think of where links will be removed from the tab order of a page. The first one is if you have a link on the page I see you've put up href equals hash, right? Okay, so the first one where I've seen done is where people have links that do some JavaScript. Now, if you leave out the href attribute completely, then it removes the link from the tab order of the page. So you always need the href there. Having href equals hash doesn't take the link out of the tab order, but obviously you're relying on some JavaScript to actually take over when you press enter when you're on that link. The other way though that you can take a link out of the tab order is to actually have tab index equal -1 on it, which is a special case tab index value. But if you do that, it actually removes the link from the tab order. It's still a valid link because you can click on it and touch it, but it just takes it out of the tab order. So I'm not sure if that is what's happening with the thing that Matt is talking about, but if the tab is skipping over it, just doing href equals hash though shouldn't remove the link from the tab order. So I think there's something else going on there basically.
I think that ties in quite nicely with Tim's question. You know, what is the best practice in terms of how to build submenus that work well with the keyboard? I've just discovered that tab the menu and press enter or space, nothing comes up.
Okay, well yes. Within WordPress themes, there are plenty of examples of where it's complete disaster, and there are pretty good plenty of examples of where it's good. If you look at the default WordPress themes, I think pretty much from the last 8 years or so, they've always had good navigation, good accessible navigation for keyboard users. Now there are two different ways there's multiple different ways, but the two key different ways, if you've only got small submenus, not many links, then the best way of doing it perhaps is just to have it so that when you tab to a link that has a submenu, it opens the tab menu, the submenu up, and then the next pressing of the tab actually takes focus into the submenu and actually could then tab through them, right? And And then once you get to the bottom of the sub menu, then pressing tab takes you to the next top level up way. If you haven't got very many sublinks, then that's probably the easiest and best way to do it. And many WordPress themes do it that way. If you've got huge like sub menus though, which a lot of large organizations tend to have, they call them doormat navigation or something like that. You won't want to force everybody to run through, a tab for keyboard users to tab literally through everything, because it's just a nightmare. So then what you need then is to make your top level items in your navigation a button, really, because then you want to tab to it and then press the enter key, and for it to then open up the sub menu and allow you to tab into it. That's probably the best two ways of doing it. There's a couple of other ways. I mean, if you want to tweet me about this, we can talk in more detail about it, because I'm glad to help out from time to time, but without going to a huge amount of detail, those are probably the two key ways of doing it.
Excellent, thank you. And I think that leads in quite nicely actually to Elliot's kind of question. Elliot's asked, accessibility and UX can be intrinsically linked from a client's perspective. I would suspect the majority of them would be more enthusiastic about UX over accessibility. What's your experience? And sorry, I've had to split this into a second statement. What's your experience on having to have those conversations with clients, and is it difficult to convince them that accessibility is equally as important as UX?
That's an extremely good question, Elliot. Thank you. And well put, Dan. And, well read out. It's a really good point, because a lot of clients, if you ask them, obviously they say, oh yeah, I care lots about accessibility. But then what can happen sometimes is that the designer who doesn't necessarily get it from an accessibility perspective comes in with some nice sort of stuff, and they say, oh, I like that. And you can say, well, you do realize that that's not very accessible at all, and it really needs to work like this. And then you get into I like it like that. And you say, well, you want it accessible. So the key arguments about why you should do accessibility, I touched on this briefly at the start of the talk, and the conversations I have had with clients along the way, is if you're selling something, you're selling a service or selling a product, and you're stopping people from groups of people from using your website, then they will just go to your competitors, right? And if you add up all the people who are blind, motor impaired, have poor vision, have cognitive impairments, dyslexia, ADHD, are deaf, hard of hearing, or just elderly like my parents or your grandparents or something like that, right? This is about 20% of the population who potentially have different access needs, right? So if those people come to your sites and can't buy your services and products, then they'll go somewhere else, right? So you won't make and that's quite a lot of people, really. So I've had much more success with saying, well, think about all these people and try it out. Tab around the page yourself, right? Use the tab key and see what happens, right, on this particular website, and see how rubbish it is, right? And think about how people are going to use it. The other side of the coin is the legal stuff, right? But people don't get, especially in the UK, because there are very, very few legal actions in the UK, much more in the States, and in Australia there's been a couple, and there'll probably be more in Europe coming forwards as well, because there's been some changes in legislation in recent months on this. But if you try and scare people, you say, oh, you'll get sued if you don't make an accessible website. The reality is that ain't going to happen. In this country. In the US it might, so it's much more positive if you say, well, you're pulling people in. The reason why also that helps with clients is because there was a survey, and I forget what the survey was called. It was done in the States a few years ago, that actually looked at people who had family and friends of people with disabilities. Say, they also, if a blind person, say, it took against a website because they couldn't use it, then their friends and family also took against that website too. So it's the friends and family effect can actually mean that even more people aren't using your website if it's not accessible, because they've heard bad things about it from people with a similar impairment or disability. So though going with the sort of like bums on seats method really of convincing people, but it is a challenge where you've got some nice sexy piece of functionality that just messes it up for some people. In some ways the way to do that is just to try and demo it to them or something like that. Find an example and say, look, try doing this and see how it works, and
Excellent, thank you. I think that's a great response, so thank you.
Okay.
One thing that I find, on a kind of a personal level, developing sites, building sites, and looking at it from an accessibility perspective, I often have to find lots of different tools, and you went through various extensions there to go through, and it's just that challenge of which tool am I meant to be using and which tool does the best job, and I don't know. Obviously, Lighthouse is now available within DevTools, and just which is the best route to go? And you're looking for tools to support the development process of accessible sites.
That's a good question, Dan. Thanks. I'd say really the one I use most often for analyzing accessibility of websites is Axe. I forget the company that market that, but it's I've got the link in the presentation, but if you just look up Axe accessibility tool, now it's great because I showed you the browser extension, and that's a way that it can be implemented, but also they do a version of it which is a JavaScript library which you can pull into your development environment. And so as part of your build process, you can pull in this accessibility library, and so you can do automated accessibility testing as you're developing, right? And it will show you these things. Thank you for whoever put that link up there. DQ. It's a very, very flexible product. Now, that's the one I'd recommend, definitely. Lighthouse is quite good, but people have found flaws with Lighthouse. But the key thing to note here, and this doesn't help you with the question, the answering the question though, is any automated tool like Axe, Wave, or Lighthouse or whatever, it can only find some accessibility problems. They're certainly a good thing to use because it will help you find the first few easily, right? Things like alternate text on images being completely wrong, color contrast and stuff like this. Axe is very good at all that kind of stuff, but some of them do take human interaction. An example is alternate text for images. Both Axe and Wave and probably Lighthouse as well, if an image has got alternate text in it, they'll say, yeah, fine, it's got alternate text, I'll move on, right? However, I've come across websites where the alternate text is on every image on the site is put the alternate text here, literally. And it's a step that someone's forgotten to do, right? Yeah. And the other thing is, of course, when you're internationalizing your site, if say I did a site for someone a few years ago where there was an English version and a Welsh version, right? Now, when you've got the same images, right, you need to make sure that, of course, the alternate text is in Welsh too. On the Welsh version, and that often gets forgotten. So these tools, by all means use these tools, and Axe is a very good one, and I do use it a lot. But remember, you can't test everything like using that. Really, you've still got to sadly, you've got to use your eyes and other bits and pieces as well, other tools, bits and pieces, other tools as well. Yeah.
Yes. Well, Graham, thank you. I don't know if anybody else on the team has any further questions here.
I just had a quick one, really. Graham, a lot of the sites that I build, we also use things like AMP for news stories, and you'll really control. The other one is there are other ones similar, but with AMP, you're restricted in what you do. Do you know if the tools test those sort of layouts, those alternative layouts?
I would imagine so. Yeah, I must admit I have not really done much with AMP myself. But if it's visible in a browser, an AMP site, even on if you're looking at it on smartphone, I mean you can you can fire up the screen reader on a smartphone, like on an iPhone or whatever like that, and try it out. I would say that you probably can. It'd be quite easy to test all that. Yeah, as I say, I'm not as familiar with AMP as perhaps I should be, but in some ways, I believe it's some kind of almost like a simplification of your site. Perhaps hopefully I haven't misread the situation there, but
no, you're right. You're right.
Yeah. So in some ways, it's probably easier to get it right in an AMP version of a site than not. But I don't know. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
Make a note of that.
Sure. Well, Graham, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time, as I mentioned. For coming on, sharing your knowledge, your experience with us again. It's always such a pleasure to have you. And as I said, such an important subject matter that we need to. We need to keep having these conversations. We need to keep having these discussions around accessibility, and encouraging as many of us as people come into the community, as people come into their life cycle, starting development. Have that exposure of accessibility. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome, and it's been great, and thanks for inviting me.
Thanks, Graham. Sorry you didn't get a chance to play for us.
Another time maybe. Another time maybe.
And of course, at the moment, we would now normally all scurry down to the pub together and have a couple of.
That's right. Yeah.
We're going to head into the social. Obviously, if you're able to, please feel free to come and join us in there after we've wrapped up. But for now, I'm going to remove you from the screen, and just again, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Graham.
Thanks, Graham.
Cheers.
Bye. Excellent. Well, thank you all so much, and Diane, Paul, Leo, thank you so much for jumping on and joining us in this evening. I'm just going to bring up my slides out whilst we wrap up. I think, or I hope you can all agree, that two very important subjects across there, two different topics that do need discussion. In fact, let's just take that off.
I think there's always while you're bringing that up, there's always this comment about the hygiene factor of a website, and it's not necessarily the most sexy thing to talk about, but in both cases those talks are about where the shortcuts that you can put in by getting to market and doing things and cutting corners will actually come back and bite you. They'll bite you both in the fact that you will have less people that will visit your website because you've not made the site accessible. And I mean, I've noticed this, I'm sure we've all noticed it, that the use of closed captioning or comments on TV is actually on the increase. It isn't just about a certain demographic. It's also about people who've got younger kids that are sitting there and wanting to watch the TV while they're asleep. And when you think of that going forward about websites, yes, it should be accessible. It should, every sense, if that's the sense you use, you should be using it. And on the other talk about how to make sure that you ensure that everything that you do has for the long term is really, we've all been there when we've realized we should have done it properly. If we did it properly, did it once and did it properly, then we won't be going back again.
That's right. I think the example that was used this evening, gov.uk, as a website, I think you've got to kind of put that up there as a gold standard in terms of both of those, in terms of the planning and obviously the accessibility side. It's a great example for us.
Yeah, and that planning phase is important as well. You get that wrong, and that's it. It's just a recipe for disaster for a project to go wrong.
I like the fact that Mark said, at a certain point, because that's happened as well during discovery, when clients have turned around and said, actually, we now realize that actually what we want to do is slightly different to how we started.
What you mean, Diane, is what you originally quoted for, that they said they couldn't afford, but they like the idea, is now what they actually want. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. All right. Fantastic. Well, let's wrap this up, and we're going to head over to the social. I just wanted to very quickly finish up by saying a big thank you. And my slide, there they are, not refreshing.
No, you've still not got your slides. Yeah, they're sort of there.
Yeah, going a bit slow there, aren't they? A big thank you to
right.
Cloudways, Funnel Pack, Weglot, Winning WP, and Yoast for sponsoring Big Orange Heart and enabling these events through that sponsorship. please do, if you can, visit big.ht/thanks. That will put together a nice little form tweet for you to send a thanks to all of these companies. If you are on live.bigorangeheart.org, you should see a link, although I think, actually, having said that, I've just removed that link accidentally.
It does definitely feel like the day after the big event, and you're now sweeping up and trying to sort it all back together again, isn't it?
Put it all back in its right place. Yep.
Place.
If you are not there, then big.ht/feedback. We want to understand, we want to hear from you about your thoughts around the platform, around thoughts around the delivery of the events. Obviously, we'd also love to hear about your thoughts around the idea of us continuing to deliver these virtual events through 2021 that we spoke about earlier. So please, we do want to hear from you at all times in relation to your feedback. Next event is 25th of February 2021. Please get that one in your diary. That will mark 1 year of virtual events, believe it or not. In fact, sorry, 1 year since our last in-person event, actually. Get that one right.
So the February one was the last one when we were all in the room.
It was. It was the day of my 40th. That's how I remember that one.
Oh, wow. God, I can't even.
You can see.
It's hard.
And you've had lockdown hair since, haven't you, Dan?
I've got lockdown hair. I didn't until someone said to me, how come you don't have lockdown hair?
That's it. I think this is the longest that Diane's hair has stayed the same colour for the whole of her life, hasn't it, Diane? It's always normally changed colours by now.
I was blue for 2 years. How long have I been red? I don't know.
Let's take
Let's in the social.
Hair and raccoon conversations will be happening in the social shortly.
as always. But in reality, though, as you say, the main point is that it has been a year. It's been an interesting year. It's been a challenging year. I mean, I think we've met a lot of the challenges along the way. It has also been a disappointing year, I think, for all of us. We could say that, the things that as well as the knowledge and the education side of everything we do here, we are missing some of that social bit, and I'm sure that a lot of people would agree, but we've still ended up delivering what we hope is useful and beneficial to the people who are watching, and the social bits are what we can do.
Absolutely, yes. And I mean, on that, it's meant that Big Orange Heart has become more and more relevant and more required through this period. So if you are able to, we would really appreciate if you found any if you've taken value from what you've had this evening. These events are offered for free, but equally it does take it does cost us to deliver Big Orange Heart as a charity. So big.ht/give. Every single penny does count, so we would appreciate it if you have the ability to make a donation. Finally, just want to mention, as I mentioned at the beginning, wordfest.live/feedback. Can you tell we love a bit of feedback? We want to know. We want to know your experience. We want to understand how we can improve these experiences as we go forward. If we're going to continue to deliver virtual events for at least the next 12 months, and we want to make sure that they fit your needs and are suitable for you, the community. So we would love to hear from you. Other than that, I just want to say again another thank you to Diane, to Paul, and to Leo. Really appreciate you being here this evening with me on screen, and just again donating your time. Thank you.
And thank you, Dan.
Thank you. Always, Dan.
Yeah.
Now you've had some sleep after last week. It's great to see you.
Leo, did you hear that the request was for a monthly?
Yeah, I did see that. I deleted that comment.
Yeah.
I thought if I delete that in the feedback, then nobody's going to see it. Unfortunately, you did. So anyway, life goes on.
Excellent. Well, if you're on live.bigorangeheart, hit the social link. There. We will see you over there in just a few minutes' time. Thank you all so much for your time, and
thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.